Mulberry Lane.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No Clerk Cody tonight, huh? Who's handling the duties of the
I can do it.
clerk? Roll call.
Supervisor Gunning.
Here.
Treasurer Rice here. Trustee Hauk.
Here.
Trustee Micus.
Here.
Trustee Lannon.
Here.
Trustee Worley.
Here.
Trustee Cody is excused.
Okay, on the agenda, I would like to add an item B. Since we're talking gravel roads, would be a simple discussion on paved roads and whether we have any, ideas if there's additional roads that we would like to do this season as far as paved. I'd like to get that. If so, we get that to the road commission as soon as possible so we can get our place in line.
But we have to budget it first. Yes, we can talk about it.
We can talk about it. This is strictly discussion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll move that we approve the agenda with the addition of new business item B, paved roads.
Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Move on to public comment, and this is going to be 3 minutes regarding items on this agenda. Seeing none, we close public comment and we move to reports and board comments. Why don't we start off with Mr. Worley?
Alrighty. Got 3 items here for the Saginaw Indian Chippewa tribe. First of all, the 2% distributions. I did speak the other day with Eric. They did receive our requests. The Tribal Council has not yet deliberated or considered any of the requests at this point. They haven't even scheduled to do that yet. So I don't have a date as to when there will be notification as to when if you receive a grant or not. But there will be the date for the distribution to the recipients will be on May 30th, on Thursday, 10 o'clock a.m. at the Zebering Center. So I think for Ben and Mark and anyone else can go to that as well. That's when the recipients actually receive the checks and the distributions, and there's usually a little speech that you give. But I don't know yet when they're going to be letting us know as to if we received approval or not. The second item, again with the tribe, we're going to be receiving an email, or maybe Mark's received it already, I don't know. It's going to be information that they're going to be sending to us. They're going to be requesting our support, as well as Mount Pleasant and other surrounding communities, the support to their request is to deny approval by the state for additional casinos and gaming off the reservations. Right now there's an issue coming up with the Little River Band of Muskegon, and that's in Fruitport Township. They purchased additional land that's not part of their reservation, which is then not part of the federal trust. So it'd be something that they purchased with the idea of wanting to put a casino there. From what I understand, that also goes against the state of Michigan compact, which requires that the casinos be placed on reservation lands. So the concern is that it's going to have casinos cropping up in an already oversaturated market. So it's something that, just want you to be aware that this is going to be coming, and something we should consider, and I think it's something that we should definitely give our support to them, from what I understand of this so far. So at some point we'll be getting that information. The third item is that last meeting, when we were talking about the 2% funding, The third item on there was for the defibrillator, which was requested for the Little League program, and to be placed over at the McDonald Park. I think I think there's some confusion as to how we were going to be funding that. So what I want to do tonight is that I did speak with Jim McLean and tell him that we did not put in for a 2% request. Instead, that the township would seek the funding for it. So I think tonight what I'd like to do is go back and make a motion that we set aside the funds for the defibrillator, so that can be available for for the upcoming Little League World Series districts that's going to be taking place here in the summer. So I don't know if this is the time when I would make that motion, or
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was probably a conflict of interest too. I probably shouldn't have said what I said.
right.
I mean, I was just, I don't. shouldn't have
You're
probably-
being very generous, and
Well.
I think that it's really a responsibility of the board to, if we're going to be providing this. Again, just for your information, what they're requesting is a Philips Head Start on-site AED for $1,240, and a wall mount to hold the defibrillator for an additional $100. So it would come to about $1,340. So maybe rounded off to $1,400, maybe not to exceed $1,400. But I'd like to make a motion that we consider that. So would it be appropriate for me to do that now, or I'm not sure, or maybe later on in the meeting? I'm not sure where to place this.
Well, I'd like to add on to that if you're gonna do that. I think if we're gonna do that, I think we should get one over at Jameson Hall and one here too. I mean,
Mount Pleasant has, from what I understand, has 2 for their ballparks that are available. Certainly.
Ben,
Norm.
Norman, perhaps with Bill's suggestion that we look at other locations, that we would refer this to maybe staff that Mark would recommend they look at it and give us recommendations on these additional items. Do we have time for something like that? Does that make more sense than for us to try to pick and choose these really important items?
I'm just trying to think.
While he's thinking, Phil, I'd just say, in my mind, it makes sense to look at what the township properties are. What's the assembly use of our properties and
There you go.
locations? Defibrillators are certainly a portable item, so there's probably some reasonable conversation that could be had, and I would agree that staff would probably be appropriate.
To
So
do
I
the
staff
necessary
Mark
research.
maybe,
Yeah.
drive that.
The main
Would
thing is,
just be my thoughts, but.
yeah, and I think that the main thing is just that we, at some point decide sooner rather than later
Yeah.
for this particular defibrillator for the ballpark, so that there's time for them to purchase it and have it installed and have everything ready, and they need to have training as well, to go with this.
Exactly.
And so, maybe, I'm not sure if the adding it on is making it more complicated, or just keep it straight for just the one item right now. I'm not sure. Maybe Mark can respond to that.
Norm, are
sorry.
you suggesting that, who is gonna purchase it? The Little League or the?
No,
Township.
Township would purchase it, yes, from what I understand.
I think that if there's 3 of them being considered, and they're $1,400, that's below an amount that needs specific board approval, for one. If the board wanted to simply direct the administration to place defibrillators at our facilities, I think we could do that. I have had some discussions since it came up last week, just by the way, with our insurance company and our attorney as it relates to liability and Good Samaritan law that's here in Michigan and some of those kinds of things. And I'm pretty comfortable that there would not be any, I mean, you can sue for anything, but we're pretty well protected. Whether, you know, because there's a couple things. You have the machines themselves, they're mounted on the wall, they're available for use. Somebody goes to use them, one, are they charged? Do they have current batteries in them? We're responsible for keeping them maintained. And if they're not functional, do we have any liability? I think the broad answer is no, and it'd be difficult to get liability attached to it. The other thing is, if we're making them available, do we have any obligation, responsibility to train anybody in their use? So that was the other question I'd asked, and a similar answer. There's a Good Samaritan law that keeps us pretty well out of it, keeping in mind that anybody can sue anybody. And from a safety perspective, you probably want them at all your facilities, both parks, this building, wastewater, Isabella admin. So at that point, you're probably up to 5. So you're getting close to your $10,000. You can, if it goes over $10,000, we'll bring it to you and get bids and all that. Otherwise, we'll just report back to you when they're in place.
So I guess I don't know enough about the machine itself. Is this something that's permanently installed on the side of a building, or is it something that's like portable that they?
They're portable.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it's not anything that's going to be a fixed piece that's always there.
No,
Okay,
and it can
all
be
right.
transferred to another facility, or you can use it elsewhere.
Well, that's not
Okay.
what I was considering. I was considering one that's affixed to the wall of the
In
building.
case.
Yeah,
And,
It's a wall
you know,
mount.
it'd be mounted somewhere in here in the foyer somewhere. It'd be mounted inside the
Okay.
concession stand or something. Be mounted inside Jameson Hall
Well, the
or
I
somewhere
think
like that.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I think the actual unit, like, it can be stored into a mounted fixture.
Well, yeah.
But you actually pull it
It needs
out
to
and you
come
can
off
take
and-
it to a different,
So you can
so,
Jim probably
yeah,
knows more about these
apply
than
it
I do.
onto somebody, but
yeah.
So it'd be nothing
So-
that like vandals could, in off hours, middle of the night, be able
well,
to.
those are the things that you'd just be tasking the administration with.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you all want to talk about, sit here,
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about.
No,
vandalism
no, I just
and
kind
all
of,
that
that's what I
kind of
was
stuff,
curious
but-
about is like, you know, how would you control somebody walking
But that's
in
what
the
our
middle of the night
job would
monkeying
be,
around with it?
you know, there's liability questions, there's operational aspects, and, you know, you see them mounted on the wall in the gym at the schools,
Mm-hmm.
you know, yes, you take them off and out and
Mm-hmm.
put them on the floor to help somebody, but, they would not be traveling around in Little League coaches' cars,
Hmm.
you know.
so you're suggesting then, if we wanted to do the 5, what we could just do is basically have a motion right now to give the administration the authority to go ahead to purchase these.
I don't even think you need a motion, you just need to
Yeah.
say, the board would like to
Yeah.
do, it's one of those nod things.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
If the accumulation of the funding goes above $10,000, I have to bring it back to you.
That sounds like a reasonable plan.
Yeah, I
Norm,
like
would you
that.
accept something like that?
yeah, that sounds good to me, yeah.
And I see nods heading, or
Yep.
heads nodding.
Yep.
Perfect.
All right.
And so what we'll do is figure out how to make it work with those
Mhm.
AEDs located at each of our facilities.
So you need 6 then? Probably should get one at the maintenance shop too.
Yeah,
One on Mission.
it may be 6, and staff will, you know, if we have permanent employees located at all these facilities permanently, you know, then we need to have them if we're gonna do it organizational
So
wide.
it's still under 10,000.
Right, yeah. So you figure 1,500 each, 6 times,
Right,
you're
9,000.
about 9,000.
And I know, you know, you mentioned a particular make and model, and,
You're right.
but
You might find something different.
we might find something different.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I know Jim McLean will be quite pleased to know that this is gonna be in the making, because I know the Little League really would like to have that out there. And as a safety feature, I think it's going to be necessary, you know, with the program going forward this summer, like I said, with the World Series.
I anticipate we'd be able to find funding in the budget for, you know, $6,000 or something in the Parks Department. If not, you know, you'll see it again in the budget amendment.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. So that's all for me.
Alrighty. Mr. Lannon?
Yes, sir. Well, got an invite, as all of you probably did, to join the League of Women's Voter for a get-together of county, local elected officials to come together, and it was open to the community to come in. And so we had an opportunity to listen to a host of speakers from various departments and boards and commissions and such to speak. Ben was invited to speak and talk about his role and about the township a little bit. So great evening to get together and hear a little bit from the elected officials and be available to citizens of the area to chat with them. And that took place last Thursday night, I believe it was. And I bet Ben might say a little bit more about it, but
Very good.
that's all I have to.
I have nothing to present tonight.
All right.
At the last road commission meeting, they approved to add White Pine Drive, which is down on Pickard, between Nottawa and Vandekar. They approved that road to go into their system. What's that? M20. Oh yeah, M20. I said Pickard, didn't I? I'm sorry. And then they also approved an abandonment, I'm sorry, of Chippewa Street, Isabella Street, and a portion of the alley out here on River Road that we had already passed to send along to them. So they abandoned those streets and vacated them. They had to say both. And then they also authorized their manager to purchase more land if they needed around their current facility. That's about it.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Oh, did they mention anything about a start time on Lincoln?
No.
Okay.
I'm good.
You're good? All right. You know, kind of piggybacking on Mr. Lannon's, that was a nice event that they put on, League of Women Voters. So and we had Mr. Lannon and myself were there representing the township, and you had representatives from every jurisdiction. Sheriff Maine talks a long time, so it was interesting, but it was a good event, and I'm glad I participated. And other than that, I think that's about it. So we would move on to item 9 at this point in time, which is consent agenda. We need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I would make a motion. Oh.
I'll second it.
And then who had the payables this week?
Yeah, I reviewed the payables and the accounts are all in good order.
Oh, you
So
did?
Okay.
I did. Did you?
That was my mom.
It's doubly accounted for.
We did double,
Hey.
double dip on it. That's good.
I always put check marks after each one when I go down it. So, and it was actually in a different place tonight, and I wondered why is it over here. So anyway,
Because we already went over it, and so she was getting it ready.
I gotcha. Yes. So now it's back to the original place where you put the check. So anyway.
All right. All right, so we do have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved, and we move on to item 10, new business. The first item is a discussion action item. This is consideration for approval of 4 contracts with the Isabella County Road Commission for the rehabilitation of 4 miles of gravel roads within the township. Mark, would you like to lead this one in?
Thank you and good evening, everybody. As we do every year, or the last several years anyways, the Road Commission is looking for some direction on which of our gravel roads should be rehabilitated this year. The road commission itself is recommending Wing Road between Whitesville and Meridian, and also Valley Road between Mission and Isabella. That would take up approximately 2 miles. There's still 2 other miles that this board would suggest to the road commission they do, or
They were
replace the other 2 that they're recommending with something else. But we have $48,000 budgeted for gravel road rehabilitation. The 4 miles at the rate that of 19, I want to say it's 18,000 a mile,
yeah.
would be $54,000. So the budget about 6,000 short. That'd be taken care of in a budget amendment. The first 2 miles, the road commission splits 50-50 with the township, and then the second 2 would be 100% funded by the township. There's a map in your agenda packet that highlighted, circled the roads that the road commission was recommending that we do. Circled in blue, southwest, you'll see Wing Road, and north, kind of northeast, you'll see the East Valley.
Yeah.
So
And
Mark, in your presentation here, when you say the aggregate share is 75 township, 25 Isabella County, that takes into account the 50-50 split on some and 100% on the other.
Right.
Thank you.
so the discussion for the board is either to accept the road commission's recommendation on those 2 miles, choose 2 additional miles, or recommend to the road commission 4 miles of something else.
Well, I would make a motion that we approve the 4 contracts with the Isabella County Road Commission for the rehabilitation of 4 miles of gravel roads within the township in the amount of $54,000.
Second.
Motion and a second, so we start some discussion up here, so,
Well, that Valley Road, he was saying it would go from Isabella Road and head to the west, then go back to the north and come out Baseline Road. Is what Jim Pohl was saying that his driver said.
Yeah, within that circle, you'll kind of hard to see, but
Yeah, it's
Right.
dotted.
yeah.
Yeah.
it's dotted going east to west. There's a small section that goes up to the north towards Baseline, which is what
Oh,
you're
yeah, I see
talking
that.
about.
Yeah.
It's a little over a mile.
Yeah, it's probably a little over a
0.5
mile.
miles and then 0.53 miles.
I was
To the
on
north.
that earlier today, and it was weird. I was telling Bill earlier that the straightaway where it curves at the expressway
Mm-hmm.
was bad, but then as soon as you took the curve and went to the north, it was like the road had been rehabilitated.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering if we want to get bang for a buck, whether we'd want to be able to take that up to that curve and then hop over to the other side and do the other half mile, and that gives us a mile. Because it seems to me like I remember us having a discussion on that area maybe 3 years ago or something.
That was for a rezoning request for a piece of property that they wanted to go from residential to agricultural, I recall. And it was it was right by the curve there. And it was a couple of years ago when they were here.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
right in that area where the Indian Pines Park is.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That, I'm not exactly sure if, I'm thinking it's in the circled area, the Indian Pines where the access to park is.
That's back a little further, but yeah, you can see it from, it's like off, it's the,
Mm-hmm.
where you get off on Isabella, it's just up the road, just a smidge, right? About maybe a tenth of a mile or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
It's not very far.
Well, where we've circled them on the map in your packet is where the road commission was making their recommendation in our last conversation with them. On Valley Road, I think part of the reasoning is immediately to the east of the oval. They just did that section last year, 2018. So you're kind of continuing that west.
Right.
And then they mentioned Wing Road, and it's completely up to the board. You know, we don't have a lot of gravel road left that we haven't rehabilitated in the last few years.
So on their recommendation per the action item, they are strictly talking about Valley Road east to west. They're not.
That's
It's not
the way
verbalized that north.
That's the way that was described to us. Now, Bill's talking to him as well, so I don't know what the latest is, but
I just
yeah.
got this from Jim today.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I don't see any reason to do that section to the north. I thought it was the best gravel road I drove the whole day, even Bamber and the others. That was that little north-south stretch.
It's up to us, we don't have to.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, if we did that whole east-west, that's 1 mile, and then we can cherry pick on some of these other ones here. You got Norm's Running Road here on Grant, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to worry about you spraining ankles, and,
That's
right?
right.
Keep you healthy,
That's right.
right?
Well, my sense is, that, the road commission, that's what they do. They're the experts, and so I always tend to concur with their recommendations, since they're the ones that that's what they're here for. We're not the experts. We're not trained in this. I know the section you're talking about. I think this has been a good give and take where, they've provided 2 miles, which they felt were the ones that were needed. They go and they, as we know, they rate the roads. We see that with the report that we get. We don't do that. We don't even know how to grade them, let alone, be cognizant of all that. And then we pick, the ones that we want. I know there's been some discussion going around, and I think there's like 5 gravel roads that could be done with our 2-mile allotment if I calculated the mileage right. So I don't know. I'm comfortable with what they want to do. But I know the section you're talking about that's still in good shape. Why don't we put that one on hold a second and maybe decide what we're going to do first with our roads? But, I tend to feel that we should really, pay attention to what they're suggesting to us too, There was on the gravel roads, some of the discussion going around for our 2 miles included Grant Road, which would be a half a mile,
Yep.
a stretch from Wing over to Millbrook. And then Isabella Road, just to the east of that, a half a mile from Wing to Millbrook. Now actually that Isabella Road then goes from Wing over to the dead end going over by the highway entrance. But there's only there's only 1 house there. So if we just did the half a mile going to the south would make sense. So that's a mile. Then there was mention of Wildwood, of a 1/4 mile there. Mulberry Lane, which would be, it's 2 blocks, which I think would then be a 1/4 mile. And then I believe that Jim Paul had spoken to Bill about Deerfield Road going east off of Isabella, down near where our rehab building is, and that'd be a half a mile. So if it'd be going east, it's East Deerfield. That would give us a total of 2 miles from what I see there. The thing with the grant in Isabella, it does then complete that quadrant, with the exception of there is a mile stretch of Millbrook that goes from Isabella over to Somerton. And Millbrook's pretty much of a throughway getting people from that section of town off over to Somerton.
Yeah.
So there's a mile stretch there that could be considered. So those are just some of the possibilities. I know they've been floating around, and I just was trying to consolidate it and see where we were at with the mileage. But if we also did the Millbrook, that 1 mile, that will complete that entire quadrant in terms of, because last year we did Wing Road going down, going west to east, heading down that full mile there.
So Norm, what you're saying is that we do Grant, basically take Wing Road, take Grant up, Isabella up, and then is that Tom Tresh's old place there that's down
Yes.
at the end of the tracks?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we do that, you've got a mile, we
Right.
pick up Wing Road, off of Whiteville,
Right.
and we're at 2. And then if we do that straightaway on
Well,
Valley,
Wildwood would be a quarter mile, right?
mm,
Is
yeah,
a quarter. So
Yeah.
then, and then Mulberry Lane would be another quarter.
yeah.
And then Deerfield Road would be a half. So that whole, if it's Grant, Isabella, Wildwood, Mulberry, and Deerfield, that's 2 miles of road there.
Mm-hmm.
The only other thing I want to add is that I don't know if I have to recuse myself as far as the Grant Road, because I do own a vacant lot on Grant, that fronts on Grant Road, that then adjoins our property over on where we live. It's kind of an L shape. So I don't know if you want me to recuse myself in terms of that, and that's fine. You know, like I said, I do have a lot there, so I just wanted the board to be aware of that.
That extra gravel's gonna increase your value in your property, is it?
Unless I can get some, I'll be raking the extra gravel over to my frontage.
Out of your ditch.
So if everyone's comfortable, then
Yeah.
I just wanted you to be aware of that, though.
I think the Mulberry would be closer to 1/8 of a mile.
An eighth?
It's 2 city blocks.
It's 2
Yeah.
blocks, so what, I was trying to figure that
It's
out.
between High and Gaylord.
I know where you're talking, yeah, I looked at that too. So that would give us then a little tinge longer.
Mulberry, when I drove down it, I think it could be, the road itself is below the grade of the surrounding land, so the water, I think, sits on it. So it could probably use a refurbishment, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't bad driving it, obviously, but
Right.
I think it's more on the edges. You could just see when it rains, the
Everything's-
water's just gonna
everything's
stay right in the
puked
middle of
out.
it.
Everything's puked out to the
Yeah.
sides, and
Yeah.
it needs to be, come in again. So then, if you're going back to what you were saying, about not using that half mile that's being suggested for Valley Road, and we have that 1/8 a mile, we're getting up to maybe the other possibilities, like finishing all the way through, the road going from, on Millbrook, from Isabella to Somerton, and that's a well-traveled road there. That's all in Millbrook. That would be another possibility, but that would be a mile.
Is this I'm trying to figure this little section on Isabella, that little dirt road right there that goes, dead ends at the expressway.
Yeah.
What's on that?
Okay, so when you go,
Potter's house is
yeah.
there.
Well,
Oh, okay, all right. We traveled that one
You,
time.
Mark, and I
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
Is that Bonnell or?
Right.
Yeah, yep.
Right.
Jim Bynell lives
Yeah,
down there, right?
The guy
Yeah.
was, remember, he was,
and that's pretty
sent a
beat,
request in.
Mm-hmm.
and that's pretty beat up, and they've asked.
A couple of years ago, that had passed.
Oh,
Okay.
Road commission, so that's way down the list.
I
Yeah.
guess so.
Yeah, I mean, I like that where we're going with this is that, and that was great being able to go through these roads today. So, again, we take the recommendation, we eliminate that north-south jut off of Valley Road that goes up to Baseline, that frees up a half a mile.
Correct.
We apply that towards Wildwood and you know, Mulberry is what we're thinking?
Well, you already have, if you take the Grant, Isabella, Wildwood, Mulberry, and Deerfield Road,
Mm-hmm.
that's our 2 miles.
Okay.
And that doesn't but what Tim is saying, and I'm not, Mulberry wasn't quite a quarter mile,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure how, you can say eighth of a mile, I'm not sure how to split the hairs on that one, but if you
Mhm.
take those 5 roads, that gives us 2 miles, which would be our 2 miles that we would be suggesting, which then frees up, if there's still then a half a mile left for the Valley Road if we don't use that one. I think I got this calculated right.
And then you've got
But might wanna
then you've
double
got
check.
Deerfield is what you're saying is take the Deerfield half mile.
No, Deerfield.
Or that's included in
That's
it?
included in the 2 miles.
2 miles.
So see,
Gotcha.
so the thing I was suggesting is that looking into then going all the way down on Millbrook, but that's a mile stretch, and we only have a half a mile of play.
But
On
we've
this
got
one.
we've got an opposing or a different township on the other side, so we'd have to have a join on that one.
No,
Oh,
Because
that's right.
you
Well,
got
No, we have to cover
Somerton,
that.
Somerton would be the border road.
but we have to
to
cover.
the east
Oh.
and to the north and the south, but Millbrook would be,
Lincoln Township.
so you'd
We
have
had-
Lincoln Township.
Yeah,
And we had to cover the other 2 miles.
yes.
Yeah.
Lincoln,
Yep, we did
They
that the
don't-
last time, you're right.
Yeah.
So leave that one, so we still then have a half a mile to play with
Mm-hmm.
if we don't do the Valley Road. So the 5 we have are fine. We have the
Mhm.
2 miles already set up. So all we have to consider now is that if we're not gonna be doing all Valley Road, we have a half a mile to play with. And,
Norm, what
Yeah.
part of Valley Road are you suggesting we're not doing that?
the north end.
the north end,
I'm reading Valley Road between Mission and Isabella to be a mile. That's not, and that's not
That's just that
going
straightaway.
north.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. But then I think Bill had mentioned that the road commission was actually looking at doing that northern jog, right? Correct, Bill, is what they
Yeah,
were
that's what he
thinking?
said. He said from,
And you
Isabella
suggested it's
Road
the
to
best
the
road
east
you've been on a dirt road.
Oh, today? Yeah, no question. I drove on that and I was thinking, well, when the heck did they do this road?
right. That's a north section, but
Yeah.
the east-west.
East-west was
okay.
horrible, and as soon as you turned the corner, it was like Shangri-La.
But isn't that a mile? I believe
It's-
going
it's-
from Valley, going all the way in there to that curve in the road, isn't that a mile?
No,
it tells right here.
it's
like
half a mile.
Half a mile, okay,
Mhm.
okay.
So the way I read it, what we have listed is a mile on Valley Road between Isabella and Mission, suggested by the Road Commission. A mile suggested by the Road Commission, Wing Road between Whiteville and Meridian. So that's 2 miles,
Going with their suggestion, you're saying?
going with their suggestion. And then we spoke of Grant
Mhm.
being a half mile,
Correct,
Mhm.
Isabella being a half mile.
Correct.
So there's another mile.
correct.
And then Wildwood
A
was a
quarter.
quarter mile.
Mulberry, we're
And
saying a
Mulberry,
quarter.
I'm saying an eighth.
Or an eighth,
Mhm.
yeah.
Isabella is 3/4 of a
Yeah.
mile.
And,
So, yeah, we're in the neighborhood
I think
of-
Bill was,
Yeah. And then
Norm was
Deerfield-
talking about not taking it past
Yeah.
Wing, though.
right, because the other side of that is just, the railroad track, and then and it dead ends there, and
Mhm.
it's, I'm not sure that is gonna be traveled that much. But then, in the 2 miles, it's also, Tim, would be a Deerfield Road.
And then you were going to Deerfield.
Deerfield off of Isabella, going to the east, and that's a half a mile. That's out by the Potter Church. And they've requested for that road too.
They want it paved with-
Deerfield.
Go-
Off of Isabella.
It's off of,
Okay.
where
Yeah,
our,
I'm with you now.
okay.
Yep.
And that's a half going to the Potter. So, we're splitting here. There's still like maybe an eighth of a mile, available. But,
Within that,
Yeah.
we're,
Mhm.
yeah,
and then what we should probably do is begin discussions with some of our bordering townships for like Deerfield and Lincoln and Chippewa for next year. Because
Mhm.
I think a majority of the stuff we'd have left is all gonna be joint ownership,
right,
right, or joint
Mhm.
responsibility,
right.
right? Because I think the only full mile stretch we'd have left then would be Lincoln. between Deerfield and Millbrook,
Mhm.
because we haven't done that one.
Say that again.
Lincoln.
Lincoln between Deerfield and Millbrook.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be the only, in our jurisdiction, full mile that we hadn't touched. That was
Mhm.
one of their suggestions like 2 years ago, and I think
Correct.
we ended up not doing that one, and we did another one instead.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
So then we're saying to go ahead, the way they're describing the Valley Road makes sense, that mile stretch.
but we want to make sure that we affirm that we want to go up to that curve and
Mhm.
not to the north.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we get more bang for our buck.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, and they're, like I said, they're the experts, so I trust the ones that they're throwing out at us, and I think we should, you know, do that, and we have some of our own here that, I think certainly are in need of repair too, so.
Okay, so let's write this down then. Have you got a
Yeah.
little notepad, and then we can maybe present that and see if
Great.
everybody's.
So,
in
so
favor.
what we're doing, their 2 miles will be what has already been described. Wing Road, Whiteville to,
As you get into that,
Okay.
if you went to page 18 of your agenda packet,
yep,
and maybe your motion can be similar to what's written there. You got Wing Road, Whiteville to Meridian, Valley Road, Mission Isabel, and then describe the other road, the start and the end terminus point, and then we'll be good to, we'll be good to
Perfect.
go.
Okay, so then, to be decided, the first one would be, we're gonna do this, Grant Road, a half a mile, well, Grant Road from Wing to Millbrook.
Okay?
Okay? The next one would be Isabella Road from Wing to Millbrook.
Okay.
That's a mile. Wildwood, what would be the roads there for Wildwood?
Deerfield back to the cul-de-sac.
Okay, Deerfield to the cul-de-sac. Okay, so far? Then, that's a quarter. Mulberry Lane, and that is from, it's like outside, in a little town area there. What would be the roads there?
Gaylord north to the end of the road.
Okay, Gaylord to the end, and at the end is where we have our lift station. Okay. So Mulberry from Gaylord to the end of the road. And then the 5th one would be Deerfield Road from Isabella going east to the end of that road, which brings us to by the Potter Church. Is that described as needed?
Yeah, so we make the motion on Valley Road, we just gotta make sure that we've got the termination line in there, that we go to the curb at the expressway maybe,
mhm,
or the
mhm.
first
Okay.
half mile, it's first half mile.
Right. So with Valley Road, this one Mission to
I'll be able to take that and turn that into a contract.
Okay,
So I think the motion would be, if one of you move to approve 7 contracts with
so it's
the
7, okay.
Isabella County Road Commission for the rehabilitation of approximately 4 miles of gravel road, in the amount of $54,000
Okay, so I'll amend my,
for the following, as described as follows, and then you
okay.
just did it.
Okay, and then we already have a motion for the 4, so I'm gonna amend the motion that I'd made. So then you'd have to, you seconded it. So then I'm amending it to approve 7 contracts with the Isabella County Road Commission for the rehabilitation of 4 miles of gravel roads within the township in the amount of $54,000, and the roads as specified.
Still support. So we're good.
All right, so at this point, discussion?
My only question on this discussion point is, Bill, when you were talking to Jim about these shorter roads, a quarter mile here and a half mile there, did Jim give any indication that the unit would remain the same? I mean, so 4 quarter miles still only costs $18,000, or are there some kind of like setup charges that
Nope,
would be
you never-
variable to make, that might change that price?
No, he just said, like last Thursday, or the 28th there, when they had their meeting, he just said, you guys need to get your mileage in. He said he's gotta get tonnage over to Fisher's. So it didn't sound like it mattered what miles we did.
Or a portion there?
Right, he never said anything.
Okay, thanks.
It's not like we're doing a half a mile, like taking a mile road and doing half the road, so we're doing complete roads. So,
That's a good question.
But no, we're doing
no, but I mean.
7 units that equal
I know,
4
I know,
miles.
He never said anything that it mattered.
Okay, thank you.
I guess the only comment I'd like to make on this, that I think maybe we could do better was that I could see really had no input from our citizens. To me, it seems like we should have a forum available, our linkage with our owners, and have some citizen input and listen to maybe some needs that they have, or some things they could bring forward to us that we aren't really aware of.
Yeah, I know we did get that from Deerfield Road, where they have been requesting for that to be done. I think that people in this area are gonna be pleased to see upgraded in their roads, but, you know.
Oh, no question, I'm
yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
But, you know, we look at how we operate as a
Right.
board,
right,
and it's all about talking with our owners, and
right,
I don't think we had much conversation.
right,
I did, so.
yeah. Yeah, Bill does.
I mean, I see a lot of people, I know on Grant Road,
Yeah.
we're doing a house there, and started about 2 months ago, and that lady whose house we're doing, she just said she'd like to see something happen with the road. She said if she would've known the road was gonna be like that, they never would've bought it.
Yeah, I agree with that, Bill, but I mean on a more
Right, I
formal
know.
level, where it's brought to our
Right,
citizens
right,
for them to
instead of
respond.
hearsay,
Yeah.
right.
You'd have to almost have a little bit of an open house, maybe
Yeah.
of some type to,
Well, I think
You
that,
know,
you know, I'd
here-
envision that's, as we move forward and have better
Mm.
linkage with our owners, it would be an ongoing thing, whether it's as our website improves, you know, suggestions, comments. We talk to them, we are gonna be doing 4 miles of road, give us input.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I-
yeah.
Just.
I agree. I mean, we could have, like, you know, we had that citizens survey, right? And that was probably the last good, solid
Piece of information.
communication that
yeah.
we had from citizens. It'd be nice to have, maybe something of a, you know, I mean, it's Pandora's box sometimes when you.
I understand
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I know there's a can of worms too, but,
Yeah,
and I do
Yeah.
think this is a great selection.
yeah, yeah.
And we
Yeah.
all drove
Yeah.
around, we
Yeah.
looked at the roads, you know, so we are taking all that into consideration
Mhm.
too. But I hear what you're saying, it's not a direct.
Yeah, I
Other
think,
than-
you know,
other than-
it's
What's that?
it's really smart for us to
Regular
just,
maintenance kind of thing.
you know, not so much crash course at the end, is to be continually maybe forcing ourselves to drive off the beaten path a little bit, and you know, you go off Isabella and you get on Berkshire and some of those roads, and wow, you want to see minefields, right?
I
And
know.
so those we have to be addressed at some point also, as far as paved are concerned. But yeah, I think we did a nice job. I you know, and kudos to this board for accomplishing a goal, I think, in record time, considering this hadn't been touched since 1993. So,
Mm.
you know, kudos to the road commission for having this program, and kudos to us to be focusing and getting this done actually in record time, I think. You know, we're looking at 20 miles of road, and golly, you know, that started when we walked in the door, and this is year 3, and we're dang near
Right.
complete.
Yeah.
So I do think, like I mentioned before,
Borders.
we do wanna maybe focus on communicating with some of these adjoining townships and,
Mhm.
and put the bug in their ear
Mhm.
that we would like to accomplish some of these combo or joint,
Yeah, I
you know,
think the
responsibility roads.
That Isabella would be a good one.
Mhm.
Tom Raymond would be the supervisor at Lincoln Township.
I know everybody at,
Yeah.
at Deerfield. I mean, I
Mhm.
could have
So
that
it's another
communication
option.
with them, so.
Okay.
All right. So at this point, any further
No.
discussion? All right, so, we're gonna bring this up for, and this is a resolution, so we should be looking at a roll call on this.
Right.
And so this is gonna be, to approve, the administration to approve, 7 contracts with Isabella County Road Commission totaling, a sum total of 4 miles of gravel road.
In the
Hold
amount-
on.
Approximately 4 miles.
Approximately 4
And
miles,
approximately $54,000.
in approximately $54,000. Okay, all right.
He's already got that motion.
And then who wants to run us through that roll call?
I can continue. It's fine.
Okay,
Supervisor Gunning?
yes.
Treasurer Rice, yes. Trustee Hauk?
Yes.
Trustee Lannon?
Yes.
Trustee Micus?
Yes.
Trustee Worley?
Yes.
All right, approved. Item B is something I added on for a discussion item, and I figured this is a good time for us to start talking, paved roads. And, in discussion with Mark, we don't have a lot of paved projects. We have the EDA's commitment on to Lincoln and the intersection on Broomfield and Lincoln. And I believe beyond that, we've got but the EDA, I think, is also the grind and pave on Lincoln here, correct? Isn't that the EDA's?
The paved road work going on in the township this construction season is repaving Lincoln Road from M20 north to Pickard, right behind us here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the work south of the bridge on Lincoln Road to Broomfield that also includes that intersection and a couple hundred feet out from each corner. Those are that's the paved road activity going on in the township. And right now that's fully funded by the EDA. You all just did gravel road work. It's being funded out of the general fund. There is no money budgeted set aside for additional paved roads. And that's not to say you can't do it, I'm just pointing that out.
Mm-hmm.
So it would come out of existing fund balance. And then the other piece that I believe would need some consideration is, and I don't recall what the date is, and the supervisor may have it with that packet. The date that we're to communicate to the road commission to be able to still get it done this construction season.
I had, tried to get an answer on that this last week, cause I know last year, I think they were kinda looking for, their deadline was like end of March, wasn't it?
I think it's April, if I remember reading, I think it was April
Oh, that's-
18th.
April.
That's 18.
April
Okay.
18th was the
It's
Oh.
18
date.
Oh, no, that's what they gave us at the,
there. Is it?
Yeah.
Well, that
Mhm.
date should be on there.
No, I think I recall April 18th reading something in there. It wasn't in that part, it was in, there's another one
Oh,
page on
okay.
top
One
of it.
page.
April 18th? Okay,
I
all right.
might be wrong, but I believe that was the date that's sticking out of my mind right now.
Well, you know, I had one that kind of stuck in my head, is that we're gonna have Broomfield and Lincoln all torn up. And so if we've got just that little stretch, because they're taking Broomfield, if you've been down by my place, they're taking it right to the top of that hill is where the lanes are gonna merge back to 2. So you'd have like that little itty bitty stretch to the city limits, which is probably less than a quarter of a mile or right around a quarter of a mile. And then that gets the worst, one of the 2 worst roads in the township, paved roads, is off the books and moved to the good category. And then the other one was that if they're gonna be going south on Lincoln, is that you've got about 3/4 of a mile, and that's, again, that's the right there with that little stretch of Broomfield, but that's just as bad.
That's 3/4 to the curve to Whiteville.
It's 3/4, you're going south on Lincoln, so you're going to Deerfield.
Oh, I'm going west.
So you're
Okay.
not, the old Knights of Columbus Hall
I know-
and
I
Sacred
know
Hearts
that,
ball
yes,
fields and
yeah.
the city water
Yep.
plant and stuff is, so for basically for a mile of commitment, you've eliminated, with the project that's going on, 1.5 miles of road. And it turns the 2 worst roads, paved roads in the township, over from PAR's rating from the worst to the top. So, and they would both be, I think, grind and paves is what they said on the report. So their estimation of cost on a grind and pave for a mile was what is it, per mile, 127,500, does that sound right?
It's more than that, I think, for
Or
a
is it
grind, a grind and pave is like 250 or something like that.
For a mile?
I believe take a look. You know, there was.
So it seems to me that was a lot higher than it was last year. Wasn't it like 120,
Well, the gravel
125?
went up from 15,000 to 18,000. So there was a $3,000 increase this year in the gravel roads. And if I recall, I thought that the grind and pave was something like, I remember 237 or something like that. I might be wrong, but
My notes say a gravel grind pave at 3 inches is over 241,000
that's okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
for 2 lanes of a mile.
So with that in
Yeah,
mind,
that's what I had in
then,
mind.
the higher price tag than was previously considered, in my book, I think it would be better that we plan for our next fiscal year, next construction season for that.
I'm just thinking from a disruption standpoint, is that corridor has had a bridge out, and where that you have businesses, not just mine, I'm talking, there's a lot of traffic through there. And so you lost the bridge for a season. You had a season with thoroughfare, and then from what I understand, this project is gonna be like a 4-month project.
Mhm.
And then you still have to deal with the north side of the bridge, which is gonna be another, 3-month project. And for the people in that area, I mean, I think that if the road's closed and the part of the road's being done, why not try to, if nothing else, that little stretch of Broomfield, just get it done. It's done, it's over with, don't have to worry about it anymore.
I think just for the sake of disclosure, it's important to mention that you have.
Oh, yeah, I have a business on there, no question about it.
And
But I'm-
stuff, same like they would.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it
That is
from the
important.
standpoint of the people that live in that area. I mean, it's been,
Yeah.
it's gonna continue to be turmoil because Lincoln is, you cut off Lincoln, man, that's, you have, the only way you can go is down to Nottawa or to, Pill Hill there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only way that you're gonna be able to get anywhere through there. So, with River, it's always, when we start taking one of those main thoroughfares out, it's a problem, And you look at, Fisher's being able to transport goods and McGurk's being able to pull out of the gravel pit and drive. It'd be just nice to be able to go through here without having disruption.
Well,
Fully on everybody else, I'm gonna recuse out of that vote, but I'm just saying that if looking at it as a citizen and commonsensically, you have literally less than 1/4 mile and you're done with Broomfield.
All right.
240,000.
That's the number. I remember it was like 250. It was for the. It's a lot of money,
I just
and
put down Lincoln
I
Road
tend to
where-
agree with Phil. I mean, when we start looking at chunks of change like that, that I think is where our due diligence and our fiduciary responsibility comes into play. $240,000 is a heck of a lot of bucks, even if the need is there. You know, it's not something we had budgeted for or planned for. And it's, you know, I understand what you're saying, that while they're there, why not just do the whole shebang? And there's certainly a case to be made with that. On the other hand, if, you know, if there's gonna be adding an additional cost that wasn't anticipated, you know, I think that prudently, I think it's probably good to consider, you know, the cost involved here, you know.
That's a shared project too, between
Yeah.
the county and
Right.
us and MDOT.
Right,
Where these other ones would just be us.
right.
Mhm.
So we're just really discussing it, it's not a, you know,
Yeah.
because there are other roads too, you know, when we tried to get the Meridian Road, from, 20 to the second bridge, that road's really beat up, and that's a border road
Mhm.
with, Deerfield Township. We had applied for the 2% with that, and, you know, that wasn't a request that we had gotten approved. I mean, there's a road there that's really pretty hazardous, and you get people going there all the time, you know, there's a lot of potholes and stuff. So I think, my sense is, I think we should look at the roads more thoroughly, make sure that if we're gonna pay that kind of money for, you know,
Yeah.
a grind and pave, you know, let's take the ones that are most necessary and most traveled and go from there. So there's a case to be made for several of these roads that we might wanna look at, you know.
I had a sheriff deputy I talked to today, and he was talking about, he said Berkshire,
Mm-hmm.
or not Berkshire, what's the name of the road, right by the VFW?
Oh, that's,
Belmont?
Belmont.
Belmont.
Belmont goes back to National and that whole
Yeah,
area.
that straightaway, he said that was like probably the worst.
Mhm.
But on that one, that's in the EDA jurisdiction too.
Right.
So that might be something that next week in the EDA, we can maybe discuss if there's anything funding for that one, because we did a lot of those roads in that area last year.
Mhm.
And I remember a discussion about that one, because a lot of the neighbors had, there's a lawn care company that's there that was using that road quite a bit, and
Green and Lawn or Green and.
something, yeah, I don't wanna mention the business name.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were having but that was a big issue, was the traffic going up and from that place, and, which I guess from what he said is tamed down a little bit. But, you know, that's something, like I said, when we get the EDA next week, then maybe we can look at that one, and maybe the EDA has the funds to take care of that one. So if we have to April 18th, that's why I wanna kinda just start the conversation now, is there anything out there that, do we have the will, do we have the funds to do it? Because I noticed in the budget that we were pretty much at where our budget line was.
Right. You know, I think major project like this isn't something we're gonna decide in a week, you know, with the, you know,
Mhm.
I mean, today's the 10th.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
we're talking 8 days away, so
That's true.
I just hate to, you know,
Mhm.
it's a lot of money to be you know, trying to
Right.
fit it in.
So it sounds like to me, we've discussed it.
Yes.
We've come to
Yeah.
I think I'm hearing a majority of voices saying that, we're not gonna make any action tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So we can move on to the next item.
Yeah,
All right.
okay.
Let's see, next item. The extended public comment. And this will be restricted to 5 minutes regarding any issue that's a citizen would like to discuss. Seeing the room empty, I'm assuming that public comment is gonna be closed. So we move on to manager's comments. Mark, would you like to discuss?
Thank you. Last week, we talked a little bit about the mobile home park and sidewalks, and I don't know if you recall that discussion or not. But I think, and we were talking, the board of trustees were talking about it because the planning commission, it came up at the planning commission. And I'm not sure what all the protocols are, but it feels like there's some response necessary from this body back to the planning commission on that topic. And I would recommend that response be that the planning commission refer that topic and discussion to the sidewalk committee. if that sounds like it makes sense, then that's what
Yeah.
we can communicate back to the planning commission via Clerk Cody. And then the planning commission can have that discussion on how to fit in our sidewalk ordinance if it can be fit in with the Mobile Home Park Act and the Mobile Home Park Commission. So I wanted to bring that back up, and if you're comfortable with that referral, then feels to me like the sidewalk committee ought to
I'd
be
agree
the
with
place where that starts.
It's what you had mentioned too in the last meeting, requesting that the sidewalk prioritization, that they be considered on these types of issues with sidewalks, and I certainly concur
Right,
with
this
that.
issue as well as planning sidewalks in the future.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so that's where that will go. And then just letting you know that the move has started from here to Isabella Admin today, maybe yesterday. That should be completed Friday and operational Monday.
Will there be any changes to the signage at that location to indicate that it's also administration?
We have not considered that, but probably should.
Yeah, that's a good
There's
point.
no change in phone numbers or any of that. We know that.
I'm sorry to have a tangential question here. The excavation or grading going on that was going on the west edge of that property, what was that about?
I believe that's we're trying to locate one of the wells in there has been, I want to say decommissioned.
All right.
And they're looking to site another one, and they've been looking at that for a year and a half now or longer. And one test drill did not meet MDEQ specs, and so they moved it down a little further away, and I think that's what the work is going on there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
All right, so we go to final board member comment. I started with Norm first, so let's start with Tim next.
Wow, I have nothing to add to tonight. Good meeting.
Same here, nothing to add, Ben?
No?
I have nothing.
I just have a quick thanks for the firefighters and those that responded to the fire. There were a lot of houses saved in that over the last couple days, so with that fire that happened, so that's all.
I just wanted to make the board aware, there was an article in the Morning Sun just last Friday, and this has to do with St. Louis, town of St. Louis in Gratiot County has also opted out of the recreational pod facilities. So now in Gratiot, it's St. Louis, Alma, and Ithaca have all opted out. Alma will be providing some medicinal marijuana types of business, but not the recreational. But I wanted to read something that that I think is coinciding with why we decided to take a wait-and-see approach to this until we knew everything that was going on. So it says here that the City of St. Louis prohibits the establishment this is their ordinance. The City of St. Louis prohibits the establishment or operation of any and all categories of marijuana establishments within its boundaries. There are a few reasons. Had to do with the uncertainty at the state level how the rules will look. So there's still a lot of ambiguity regarding the rules. So again, I think we made a good decision regarding this for the time being. The state has a year from last December to put the law into place. If that deadline is not met, the rules governing recreational marijuana facilities licensing, by default, under the Act, would fall to the local municipalities, which would then become the regulatory body and not the state. So that was something as what they were taking into consideration here. And they also said that after listening to experts on both sides of the issue, we felt that there were too many gray areas in the law as it was currently written, and so that's why they ended up, deciding to opt out. So there are more communities, that have been doing what we're doing in terms of just being prudent and a wait-and-see attitude and see what develops with these, with the laws and how to fit it in, if you do fit it in your ordinances and all that. So I think I just want to, compliment the board on the fact that, we were very thoughtful, I think, in looking at some of these issues and just deciding, let's wait and let's take our time. So anyway, it's another town that decided to do something similar. That's it for tonight.
All right. Thank you, Norm. I just have one thing, and I had a couple of fairly long discussions with Sheriff Maine, and it's about the fact that how understaffed they are, and they're really kind of been pushed to the limits. They are 4 deputies down. They have a very difficult time retaining people. And the fear is that when they have an officer, say, in Wise Township, how quickly can they get back to Union Township? They have such a large, broad area that they're covering. In years past, from what I understand, is that Union Township actually used to fund one officer, and that officer was dedicated just to Union Township. I think that it'd be worth discussing and moving forward is that we have a millage that we have for fire prevention. And I think that what he's telling me is that he really doesn't think that moving forward the situation is going to change. There's some financial limitations that have been put in place where their younger officers essentially train under the sheriff's department but then leave for greener pastures as soon as they get the training, because they're not able to pay them as much as, say, CMU and Mount Pleasant does. And the younger officers apparently don't have a pension, so there's really nothing to keep them, in the Isabella County Sheriff's Department. And so I think as we move forward and this township it continues to grow, that maybe this is something that needs to be discussed as a possibility to present to our residents, is that, without having our own police force is funding that dedicated officer to our township, so if there is an emergency that we have quick response. So that's one thing that I wanted to bring up. The deputy I talked to today gave me exactly the same answer, is that's what Sheriff Maine did. And so moving forward, again, with an election year coming up, whether it's this one or next, I think that having good law enforcement available and having quick response times is something that we should, strongly look into.
He's mentioned that to me a couple of times. He said that we're lucky we're not being assessed a deputy.
Yeah.
We have more calls than all the rest of the townships combined.
Yeah, and they have to look at being fair to all the surrounding townships too. And so if we are putting that burden on them, it's something that if it was done in the past, then there was a precedent set. Maybe it's time that we look at this again. So.
And so what would that look like? I suppose it could be a study conducted that we might pay, find out what it will cost for a study, put that study in our next year's budget to evaluate that, because there are a lot of factors that, from my point of view, that would need to be considered. One thing that I would just say, because you've said it tonight, and I would say, is that should we, at the end of a study, recognize that, we need to fund one officer. That is not gonna solve all the other problems that the department has and that the county has
Yeah.
on funding services that they need to provide.
Yeah, yeah,
So, I'll leave it there.
yeah. That's a quagmire. You know, it's a little bit of Pandora's box when you start discussing it, but.
And
You
that's
know,
why we need to,
yeah.
if we're gonna look at it, we would need to have third party look at that for us in the form of a study, rather than us trying to
Yep.
put some goggles on and look through a quagmire, because we would
Yeah.
not have any success doing that.
Exactly. And that's where we want to start the discussion. So, I mean, this is something that has been brought up to me multiple times, and having the discussion today reaffirmed the same thought. It was not the sheriff itself that was talking to me, it was a deputy, and he gave me the verbatim answer. So I think that moving forward for this township, that it would be prudent for us to maybe look at, you know, however we start the processes or discussion, whether it's a study or, you know, whatever, or we have them present numbers as to, you know, what it would cost. But you're right, I mean, it all comes down to simple fact is that if we're only able to retain these officers for a couple of years, it's gonna be a revolving door.
Yeah, but Phil, you have a good point. We can't resolve the problems, but if they have no pension or they have lower pay, that's not gonna be our issue. So you gotta stick to what we would be responsible for and why we would be doing it.
Exactly.
So anyway, I think we've
Yeah.
had that you know, I think it's good to bring it forward and to consider it at some point, so.
This did come before us not too many years ago. And it came to us because there was grant money available for a
Yep.
couple of years. And there was a lot of discussion, a lot of presentations, considerations. I don't recall that we did any sort of hired study, but we did. There was someone from Ferris State University, it seems to me,
I looked
That
at
was-
call records and
that was
analyzed
utilized.
it.
So there's some fairly recent data
Mm-hmm.
that is specific to the topic you bring forward.
Good point.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, even with the grant funding, it wasn't supported. But, so there's some fairly recent history that could be
Okay.
possibly uncovered.
Okay,
All right.
all right. That's how we discuss this, guys. Thanks. Appreciate it,
Welcome.
girls.
Thanks for bringing it up.
All right, so at this point in time, we're at Mr. Micah's favorite moment. If you want to make the motion.
Why, sure, I'll move that we adjourn.
Magic
Support.
Micah's makes the motion, and who supports it?
Me.
Mrs. Rice. All right, all in favor,
Makes
say
the
aye.
motion.
Hi.
Aye.